Hey, it's your boy Kai, and I'm here to talk to you about white privilege. Yes, white privilege exists. You see, over the past, I would say 2 weeks, I've had full on conversations with two different white males from two different walks of life, both of whom believe that there is no such thing as white privilege. Today, I'm going to talk about why I have been getting more and more offended the more I think about that. So, first and foremost, let's talk about understanding white privilege. In both conversations that I had, both of these individuals seemed taken back that I would even suggest that white privilege is real. And after thinking about those conversations night after night, I realized that they are denying white privilege while completely misunderstanding what white privilege actually is. It has suddenly become clear that they do not fully understand how society gives them privileges that they currently enjoy. I dare even say that they've been miseducated on the subject. They are unable to connect racial inequalities from the past and connect it to their current stature in life. I find it very funny that both men displayed an ignorance to the topic of white privilege. They don't detect any hints of it, nor do they believe they personally have benefited from race based privilege. That, in and of itself, is privilege. By denying or refusing to see the injustice, they don't usually have to confront it, nor will anyone ever really call them out on it. To be fair, I guess, this is no fault of their own. This, unfortunately, is how American ideology has served the underprivileged for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's ingrained into privileged brains. So, who benefits from white privilege? I think there is also this notion that white privilege only extends to the rich or the upper class, which is just ridiculously false, laughable even. There is this mindset that privilege doesn't actually apply to working class white people. So it's improper for people like me to even remotely consider them falling under that privileged umbrella. I was reading an article lately and it stated it perfectly. J.D. Vance, the author of Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of an economically struggling and largely white small town in Ohio, articulated a version of this thesis in a podcast with Vox's Ezra Klein. Vance invoked the hypothetical son of an unemployed West Virginia coal miner who resides in an all white economic wasteland. This son, confined to a pocket of poverty, tastes no hint of his supposed privilege. Thus, Vance told Klein that if you're asking him to check his privilege, you're asking just too much from basic human cognition. That kid cannot look at his life and say about a group of people that he doesn't understand, that he doesn't even interact with on a day-to-day basis, that their lives are much worse than his. And I think that's one of the things that modern discourse around racial privilege and racial disadvantage misses. He continues, he says, but Vance's argument is wanting. For one, American culture, not impoverishment, has taught white people to misunderstand white privilege. Individual white people shoulder no responsibility for creating white privilege, but denying its presence prolongs its lifespan. And that does warrant criticism. Granting a white working class this moral reprieve absolves them from culpability. There's a false narrative. And that false narrative is that skin plays no factor. As I continued having this conversation with about white privilege with these men, one of the individuals, he was quite adamant that skin color doesn't necessarily prevent people from being rich or poor. If I wasn't so caught off guard by this mindset, I probably would have explained to him the following. Number one, when you turn on the TV or if you watch a movie, you will always see your skin color widely represented. That's privilege. Number two, when you ask people to close their eyes and picture Jesus, more likely than not, they're going to picture a white man with blonde hair. That's privilege. When I look around my office, my own office, and I see 3 or 4 people that look like me amongst hundreds of people, that's privilege. I can also give some historical examples of white privilege. Number one, let's look at Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws were a collection of state and local statutes that legalized racial segregation. Named after a black minstrel show character, the laws, which existed for about 100 years from the post Civil War era until 1968, which wasn't that long ago, were meant to marginalize African Americans by denying them the right to vote, hold jobs, get an education, and so many other opportunities. Those who attempted to defy Jim Crow's laws often faced arrest, fines, jail sentences, violence, and sometimes even death. Number two, housing discrimination. There could be no question that access to housing remains unequal to this day. Despite long-standing laws guarding against such discrimination, members of the disadvantaged groups have a harder time finding a high-quality place to live in a high-opportunity neighborhood. Number three, COVID-19. More Black Americans are dying during the pandemic than white Americans. Blacks, relative to whites, are more likely to live in neighborhoods with a lack of healthy food options, green spaces, recreational facilities, lighting, safety. These subpar neighborhoods are rooted in the historical legacy of redlining. Redlining is the devaluation of neighborhoods and assets for Black neighborhoods. Additionally, Blacks are more likely to live in densely populated areas, further heightening their potential contact with other people. They represent about 1/4 of all public transit users. Blacks are also less likely to have equitable healthcare access, meaning hospitals are farther away and pharmacies are subpar, leading to more days waiting for urgent prescriptions. So health problems in the Black community manifest not because Blacks don't take care of themselves, but because the healthcare resources are criminally inadequate in those neighborhoods. White privilege is more than money. The individuals I spoke with both contended that there is no privilege that white people have that Black people cannot get themselves. One of those people would also refute all of my statements by relating everything to money. But it's about more than money. It's about perception and opportunities that he is clearly unaware of. That is privilege. Let's go through this. Here are some ideas that you can consider. Number one, Black females quite often do not have cosmetic makeup that matches their skin tone, meaning that some of the best products that white females use on their skin is not even available to non-white users. That is privilege. Number two, natural looking hair on both Black males and females are deemed unprofessional and, quote, nappy. Hence, why you rarely see Black men and women with natural hair in professional settings. That's privilege. Number three, most television shows feature white protagonists. It's not nearly as often that one will see a non-white protagonist in normal circumstances. That has been a long-standing privilege ever since the first movie was ever shown. Number four, growing up, I would often be told that I talk white, quote, because I spoke eloquently. That is privilege. Number five, sometimes people believe that non-white people that are successful got there because of a thing such as affirmative action or the Rooney Rule in the NFL, not necessarily because of their skill set or their talent. That's privilege. Number six, Black households have to teach their children about discrimination because of their skin color. That is privilege. So where do we go from here? How do we improve? How do we move forward? These have been questions plaguing our society for decades, centuries even. But it's gotten its long overdue attention ever since the Black Lives Matter movement really hit its peak in 2020. If you're white, and you're looking to help fight for the equality of all races, the first step comes with acknowledging that white privilege exists. The examples I went over today describe the common disadvantages that are faced by people of color, but they don't even begin to underscore the results of those disadvantages. So if you're one of those people that want to help, here are 5 things that you can do when acknowledging your privilege. Number one, you need to acknowledge that white privilege 100% exists, especially here in the United States. Number two, listen to the BIPOC community as we tell our stories. Do not meet our stories with combative responses or defensiveness. Just listen. Number three, commit to the fight. While you may not feel that you've benefited from white privilege, there are millions of white Americans that have over centuries. Commit to the BIPOC that you're going to fight anti-racism. Number 4, talk with other white people about systemic racism. Educate them. It's important to have these conversations even when you're uncomfortable. And number 5, examine your life and your situation and see how you may have potentially played a part in the systemic racism that Black Americans face every single day. Now, this is a message to the individuals I had the pleasure of having this conversation with. If you're watching this right now, if you're listening to this right now, this is for you. I want you to know that I do not think, nor have I ever considered you to be a racist. However, I am truly offended that you refuse to even remotely acknowledge the fact that white privilege is ingrained in our society, and you truly have benefited from it. You really have. White privilege might be a hard concept for you to understand or even decide to take action upon, but I implore you to ask yourself this. Ask yourself, if my skin wasn't white, would I be in the same position that I am in right now in this moment? I want you to truly answer that question. And from there, you might begin to have a better understanding as to why I recorded this video and this podcast in the first place. With that said, friends, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you listened to today, please be sure to follow me on your favorite social media platforms. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at The Vibe with Kai. You can also follow me on my website, thevibewithkai.com, where I'm always posting blogs and videos and things that'll help you do good, feel good, be good, and live a good life full of good vibes. With that said, once again, thank you so much for watching and for listening. As always, God bless and good vibes.